Good to be with you. I'm Katie Tur. We have breaking news, major news. Special counsel Robert Hur has declined to prosecute President Biden for his handling of classified documents. Forgive me, I'm reading directly from our top lines. He said Biden's practices, though, present serious risks to national security, and added that President Biden portrayed himself as an elderly man with a poor memory who would be sympathetic to a jury. Quote, our investigation uncovered evidence that President Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified materials after his vice presidency when he was a private citizen, the report said. But the evidence does not establish Mr. Biden's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Again, this is the special counsel investigation by Robert Hur, who was confirmed under Donald Trump, into President Biden's handling of classified documents. A reminder of what special counsel Hur has been looking into for more than a year. In the aftermath of the discovery of dozens of boxes containing thousands of government documents, including 300 with classified markings, some labeled top secret, that Donald Trump took with him and both withheld and allegedly hid at Mar-a-Lago, President Biden's lawyers did a preemptive search of their own to see if Biden took anything after he left the vice presidency in 2017. Joining us now is Mike Memoli, who's been covering this and covers the White House for us. Mike's good to have you. It's a mix of good news and bad news for the president.
Yeah, Katie, for those who remember what happened in 2016 involving former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, the Democratic nominee at the time for president, of course, we remember there were no charges, but a pretty damning report from the Attorney General at the time, James Comey. Their initial top lines were reading of this report find a similar situation, that there are no charges recommended here against the president, but some damning details, including the statement that he willfully retained documents after leaving office. I think the point that you highlighted about how the special counsel and his team found their interviews with the president, in which he, as it was put, his memory was significantly limited, are certainly going to be weaponized by the president's opponents. We also see an interesting moment as part of the investigation in which the president's ghostwriter, this is, of course, the former president, former vice president at the time, as he was working on his book after leaving office, had recordings of President Biden, the former vice president at the time, talking about having uncovered classified documents in his possession at the time. So that is a significant moment that comes back from 2017, according to the special counsel report here. So let's just step back and underscore the most important fact, which is we're just reading this report as it's being made public at this moment. There's going to be a lot of details. We understand it's a 400-page document, and so these are just literally the top lines that we're reading at this moment. The House Judiciary Committee Republicans are already out accusing a double standard of the Justice Department here for not bringing charges against the president, as we also, of course, see President Biden's likely opponent in the general election, former President Trump, with a different investigation here into his handling of classified document. One thing that we also understand to be true from this report is that there is a very clear distinction being made between the ways in which former Vice President Biden handled classified documents and how President Biden worked with the Justice Department during that investigation. Very cooperatively, his team did. Remember, there were multiple searches of his home in Wilmington, Delaware, as well as a search of his beach home in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, versus what Donald Trump, the obfuscation, the resistance to any form of a search, to any form of cooperation. So that is something that is coming through this as well. But, Katie, certainly this is a moment where we are about 10 months before the election, where I think a lot of Democrats are going to be seeing these top lines and having a lot of unfortunate flashbacks to 2016. We expect to hear from the White House counsel, from the president's own personal attorney, Bob Bauer, about these findings in very short order. We did hear from them already today in this significant way, which is there was what's called a privilege review. That's an option to the White House to go through through this report to potentially mark items in the report that they believe should be withheld because of executive privilege. The White House saying that out of the president's longstanding commitment to transparency here, that they chose not to invoke privilege over any of this. And so I think that is ultimately also going to be an important part of this discussion, which is that the Biden team is going to be underscoring, which is the way in which they fulsomely cooperated at every step of the way with this investigation versus what we have seen from former President Donald Trump. But as we look through the initial findings of this, there are certainly some easily weaponized politically opportunities here for the president's opponent.